Friend's boyfriend kills mom of 6 after she called 911. Today, we dive into a chilling Reddit story that will leave you questioning everything. In this tale, we'll follow the disturbing events that unfolded, revealing shocking twists and unexpected turns. As we piece together the details, you'll see how a simple situation can quickly spiral into something terrifying. Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind this haunting experience. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another gripping story. On April 24th, 2020, a devastating discovery was made in Racine, Wisconsin. The body of 30-year-old Brittany Booker, a devoted mother of 6, was found. She had been shot multiple times, a tragic end to a life filled with love, sacrifice, and resilience. What made her death even more heartrending were the circumstances surrounding it. Brittany had been trying to help a close friend escape an abusive relationship, a noble act of kindness and bravery that ultimately cost her everything. In the process of protecting someone she cared for, Brittany herself became a victim, leaving behind 6 young children who would now grow up without their mother. Racine, a city not typically associated with high crime rates, became the backdrop for this shocking incident. Although violent crimes are not a common occurrence in the community, Brittany's case stood out as a chilling reminder of the dangers that victims of domestic violence face, along with those who try to help them. This was more than just a story of tragedy. It was a reflection of Brittany's unwavering spirit and the lengths to which she was willing to go for someone in need. Her story brought attention to the ripple effects of abuse and the selflessness of individuals like Brittany who step in to make a difference, even at great personal risk. Brittany Booker was not just a mother, she was a determined woman who had overcome her fair share of challenges. Born and raised in Racine, she was brought up in a close-knit family where her parents instilled strong values of compassion, hard work, and community involvement. Her upbringing shaped her into someone who cared deeply for others. Education was emphasized in her household, and despite facing personal struggles, Brittany remained focused on her goals. She attended Racine Unified School District, where her vibrant personality and perseverance stood out to classmates and teachers alike. Those who knew her during these years described her as a young woman who was determined to create a meaningful life for herself and her loved ones. In her early adulthood, Brittany embraced the joys and responsibilities of motherhood. By the age of 30, she had 6 children, each of whom she cherished deeply. Raising 6 kids was no small task, but Brittany met the challenge with remarkable strength and unwavering dedication. She was committed to providing a stable and nurturing environment for her children, often juggling multiple responsibilities to ensure they felt loved and supported. Whether it was helping them with homework or attending their school events, Brittany prioritized her children's happiness and well-being above all else. Her role as a mother was the cornerstone of her life, and it was something she took immense pride in. Beyond her own family, Brittany was known for her generosity and willingness to help others. She believed in standing up for what was right and offering support to those in need. It was this very sense of loyalty and compassion that connected her deeply with one of her friends, a woman she had known for years and had come to trust as a sister. Their bond was one of mutual care and protection, and Brittany was always willing to go the extra mile for her friend. She often acted as a pillar of strength, someone who could be relied on in times of crisis. This friendship, however, would later play a pivotal role in the events that led to Brittany's untimely death. Brittany's friend was trapped in an abusive relationship, a situation fraught with fear and danger. True to her character, Brittany stepped in to help her friend escape, even though the risks were significant. She acted out of a deep sense of duty to protect someone she cared about, putting herself in harm's way in the process. Her actions were a testament to her courage and her unwavering belief in standing up against injustice. Tragically, her bravery led to devastating consequences. Brittany's life was cut short, but her legacy as a loving mother, a loyal friend, and a courageous woman continues to inspire those who hear her story. For security reasons, Brittany's friend's real name was not revealed. But for the sake of this story, let us call her Queen. Queen had been in a deeply troubling relationship with a man named Terry Jackson. This was not the kind of relationship anyone would wish for, as it was filled with physical abuse and emotional torment. Queen had endured years of mistreatment at Terry's hands, leaving her trapped in a cycle of pain and fear. It was a situation that would leave most people questioning how she had managed to stay for so long. However, as we often see in abusive relationships, The cycle is hard to break, and Queen's circumstances were no different. One of the most dangerous aspects of Queen's relationship with Terry was their living arrangement. Sharing a home with her abuser made her vulnerable to his outbursts at any time. She had no physical or emotional safe space, and this constant proximity to him only worsened her suffering. Victims of abuse often feel isolated, and Queen was no exception. She carried the weight of her struggles alone, hiding the truth from those around her. This silence, though common among victims, made her situation all the more perilous. Unfortunately, like many others in similar situations, Queen reached a breaking point before she could truly seek help. It wasn't until things escalated beyond her ability to conceal them that Brittany became aware of Queen's ordeal. Brittany's discovery came as a shock, and it was clear that Queen's situation had spiraled out of control. What Brittany uncovered was more than just the signs of physical abuse. She also learned about Terry's troubling history. He was out on bond for charges related to illegal substance use, a fact that only added to the danger Queen faced. Brittany realized that the man her friend was living with was not just abusive, but also unpredictable, a combination that posed a grave risk to Queen's safety. The breaking point came on August 20th, 2020, during a heated argument between Queen and Terry. For years, Queen had endured his abuse quietly, but on this day, on their way back to Wisconsin from the court hearing, Queen allowed Terry to take the wheel and drive them home. This seemingly routine act turned into a nightmare when Terry made an inexplicable decision. He stopped the car in a secluded area of a college campus, far from any prying eyes. What happened next was horrifying. Without warning, Terry launched into a violent attack, beginning to strangle Queen. His aggression was relentless and cruel, as he even attempted to gouge out her eyes during the assault. It was a chilling display of brutality, but shockingly, it didn't end there. The violence went on for an agonizing 3 hours. During this time, Queen endured unimaginable physical and emotional pain. As if the prolonged attack wasn't enough, Terry escalated the situation further. He pulled out a box cutter, pressed it against Queen's neck, and threatened to slit her throat. He warned her in no uncertain terms that she was never to report him or his actions to anyone. He made it clear that his fear of returning to jail or facing court, again, far outweighed any concern for her well-being. After making these threats, Terry left Queen injured and alone in the car. Despite her severe injuries, Queen managed to summon the strength to drive herself to the hospital. The pain she endured during that drive must have been excruciating, but her determination to seek help was stronger. When she arrived at the hospital, the medical staff were stunned by the extent of her injuries. It was clear that she had been the victim of a prolonged and vicious attack. The staff immediately contacted law enforcement to report the incident, recognizing the gravity of the situation and the danger Queen was in. However, what followed was nothing short of frustrating and disappointing. One would expect that Terry would be arrested and held accountable for his actions, given the evidence of his violent behavior and the immediate danger he posed. But that was not the case. Despite the severity of the attack and the threats he had made, Terry was neither arrested nor held accountable at that moment. This failure to act left Queen in a constant state of fear for her life. She knew that Terry was still out there, and his threats made it clear that he would not hesitate to harm her again if she sought justice. The lack of legal action only deepened her sense of helplessness. It was at this critical point that Brittany Booker became involved. Brittany, as we've come to know her, was a dedicated mother of 6 and a loyal friend who always stood up for those she cared about. When she learned about what Queen had gone through, she couldn't stand by and do nothing. Brittany's sense of duty and compassion drove her to step in and support her friend. Little did she know her decision to help Queen would lead her into a dangerous situation, one that would ultimately place her own life at risk. Queen had endured so much at the hands of Terry Jackson, and it was only natural for her to turn to someone she trusted. She confided in Brittany Booker, sharing the horrifying details of the abuse she had suffered. Brittany listened with compassion, offering not only her support, but also a promise to help if the need ever arose. At that moment, neither of them could have known how soon that promise would be tested. Terry seemed to have vanished after his brutal attack on Queen, giving the illusion that the danger had passed, but as events would soon show, his absence was only temporary. Just 5 days later, on February 27, 2022, Queen made the decision to return to her house to gather some belongings. The trauma of her last encounter with Terry still lingered, and she feared the possibility of running into him again. To ease her fears, she asked Brittany to come along. Brittany, being the loyal friend she was, agreed without hesitation. She wanted to ensure Queen felt safe and supported. Neither of them could have anticipated what would happen next, nor the price Brittany would pay for her bravery. When they arrived, Queen wasted no time and began hurriedly packing her things, as if some sixth sense warned her of impending danger. Just as Queen was in the midst of gathering her belongings, the unthinkable happened. Terry appeared out of nowhere, wielding a hammer with chilling intent. It was clear that he had no intention of letting Queen leave peacefully. Without a moment's hesitation, Terry began attacking Queen with the hammer. The suddenness and brutality of the assault were horrifying. Brittany, witnessing the violence firsthand, immediately sprang into action. She tried to intervene, dialing 911 for help while shouting to deter Terry. She even attempted to defend. Enraged by Brittany's attempts to stop him, Terry turned his attention toward her. The man who had already proven his capacity for extreme violence now focused his wrath on Brittany. He struck her with the same hammer, leaving her battered and bleeding. The sheer force of the attack was overwhelming, but somehow Brittany managed to summon the strength to escape. Injured and desperate, she fled to a neighbor's house only to find no one home. Exhausted and losing blood rapidly, Brittany collapsed on the neighbor's porch. Her condition was critical, and time was running out. By a stroke of luck, passers-by noticed Brittany lying on the porch and immediately called for help. Their quick actions likely saved her life. Emergency responders arrived swiftly, and both Brittany and Queen were rushed to the hospital. The extent of their injuries was severe, a testament to the brutality of the attack they had endured. For Brittany, the events of that day were a grim reminder of the risks she had taken to protect her friend. For Queen, the violence reaffirmed the danger Terry posed, not just to her, but to anyone who tried to stand up to him. It was clear that Terry had become far more than an abuser. He was now a full-blown threat to anyone in his path. While Brittany and Queen received medical treatment, the authorities faced a critical task: bringing Terry Jackson to justice. The brutality of his actions and his willingness to harm without remorse highlighted the urgent need to apprehend him. This time, there could be no delays or oversights. Terry had already shown that he was capable of inflicting immense harm, and if left unchecked, he would likely strike again. The police knew that capturing him was not just about justice for his victims, but also about preventing further tragedy. What began as a story of abuse had now escalated into a hunt for a dangerous man with lives hanging in the balance. After the brutal attack on Brittany and Queen, the authorities wasted no time obtaining a warrant for Terry Jackson's arrest. Recognizing the threat he posed, law enforcement launched a multi-state manhunt to track him down. Police scoured Wisconsin and expanded their search into 5 neighboring states, pursuing every possible lead. Despite their efforts, Terry seemed to have vanished without a trace. Law enforcement urged the public to help, sharing images of Terry across social media and news platforms. A $2,000 reward was announced by Crime Stoppers for information leading to his capture. Yet, for weeks, the manhunt yielded no results, leaving an unsettling fear in the hearts of his victims. For Brittany and her family, Terry's disappearance offered little solace. While some might have felt relief at his absence, Brittany knew better. She understood the extent of his determination and violence. Even after leaving the hospital, she lived in constant fear, always on high alert. Brittany adopted a habit of looking over her shoulder whenever she stepped outside and avoided lingering in public places. Her fear of being found by Terry was justified, considering his history of reappearing when least expected. Unfortunately, the precautions she took provided only a brief sense of safety before tragedy struck again. On the morning of April 24, 2022, Racine police received a distressing call from Brittany's home. One of her 6 children had dialed 911, reporting a chilling discovery. The child explained that their mother and her car were missing when they woke up, but that wasn't what alarmed them the most. The child also revealed that Brittany's bed was soaked with blood, indicating something terrible had happened. It was clear that Brittany had not left voluntarily. The bloodstain suggested a violent struggle had occurred, one that likely ended with Brittany being forcibly removed from her home. What made the situation even more concerning for her children was Brittany's silence. Typically, Brittany was always reachable and responsive. She would never ignore their calls or fail to check in with them. But on this day, every call they made to her phone went unanswered. This uncharacteristic behavior heightened their fears, and the gruesome scene in her bedroom only added to their dread. The absence of any contact with their mother left Brittany's children in a state of shock and helplessness. They could only hope the police would uncover the truth about what had happened to her. Thankfully, the investigators soon found a crucial piece of evidence. A doorbell camera from a nearby home had captured footage from the night of Brittany's disappearance. The officers reviewed the footage, and what they saw confirmed their worst fears. The camera revealed Brittany being forced into her car by none other than Terry Jackson. The recording provided a clear timeline of events and became a pivotal lead in their investigation. While this discovery was heartbreaking for her family, it was also a significant breakthrough for law enforcement. With this new evidence in hand, the search for Brittany intensified. The video not only confirmed that Terry had taken her, but also suggested he was still nearby. The footage reignited the urgency to locate Brittany and bring Terry to justice. For her children, it was a devastating realization that their mother was in danger and the man responsible was still on the loose. The hope for Brittany's safe return now depended on how quickly the police could act on the evidence they had uncovered. Time was running out, and the race to find her had begun. The doorbell footage provided a harrowing glimpse into Brittany's final moments. It showed Terry Jackson walking closely behind her, forcing her to move toward her car. At one point, Brittany turned around, perhaps trying to resist or plead with him, but Terry's response was chilling. He threatened to hit her if she didn't comply. The video left no doubt in the minds of investigators. Brittany was in immediate and great. Finally, on May 22nd, 2022, nearly a month after Brittany's murder, the manhunt came to an end. Terry Jackson was apprehended in Chicago after being spotted by law enforcement. His capture marked a critical step toward justice for Brittany and her family. While it could never erase the pain of her loss, it brought some relief to those who had tirelessly fought to hold Terry accountable for his heinous actions. Brittany's story became a painful reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the importance of protecting those who stand up against it. Her legacy lived on in the determination of her community to ensure her death was not in vain. Terry Jackson's capture brought an immense sense of relief to Brittany Booker's family and the Racine community. For weeks, they had been living under the shadow of fear and uncertainty, knowing a violent fugitive was on the loose. Terry faced multiple charges, with the most serious being first-degree intentional homicide. During his initial court appearance on May 26, the judge set his bond at an extraordinary $10 million, reflecting the brutality of the crime and his history of violent behavior. This unprecedented decision underscored the severity of the case and the need to ensure public safety. Brittany's family, determined to see justice served, attended every court hearing, carrying with them the memory of their beloved daughter, sister, and mother. Amid the legal proceedings, questions arose about Brittany's 6 children and what would happen to them. Following the tragedy, her father stepped forward to take custody of the kids despite the enormous emotional and financial challenges this entailed. Her youngest daughter was just 2 years old, far too young to understand the gravity of what had happened. Brittany's father now shoulders the responsibility of raising the children, ensuring they grow up in a loving and stable environment despite the immense void left by their mother's absence. The family's resilience in the face of such heartbreak became a symbol of strength for the community. However, as the case unfolded, it became even more complex. Investigators uncovered that 3 women had been aiding Terry while he was on the run. These women were charged with harboring a fugitive and obstructing justice, accusations that cast a troubling shadow over the case. Their involvement not only prolonged Terry's evasion of the law, but also deepened the tragedy as it showed the lengths to which some individuals would go to protect a dangerous criminal. The revelation further underscored the challenges law enforcement faced in bringing Terry to justice and added another layer of pain for Brittany's grieving family. Brittany's death sent shockwaves throughout Racine and beyond, sparking urgent conversations about domestic violence and its far-reaching consequences. Community members organized vigils to honor her memory, shedding light on the need for systemic changes to protect victims of abuse. These gatherings were not just moments of mourning, but also acts of advocacy, urging society to address the root causes of domestic violence and offer better support to those affected. Brittany's story resonated deeply, serving as a poignant reminder of the risks some individuals take to help others and the price they sometimes pay. As the legal battle against Terry Jackson progressed, Brittany's family and supporters remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice. Her case became a rallying cry for change. The tragic story of Monteisha Arrington begins with a chilling act of violence. Her mother was ruthlessly shot, and Monteisha was hunted down in the streets by her abuser, culminating in a cold and calculated killing. This heartbreaking incident took place in Littleton, North Carolina, a town with crime statistics that paint a grim picture. With approximately 79 incidents per 1,000 residents annually, Littleton struggles with a higher-than-average crime rate. Property crimes such as theft and burglary are the most common, while violent crimes like assault and robbery occur at a moderate rate of 4 per 1,000 residents. While the northeastern parts of the town are considered relatively safer, central neighborhoods face the brunt of criminal activity. Though the town has seen a 7% decline in crime over recent years, these improvements provided little solace to Monteisha, whose life was cut short by an act of unspeakable cruelty. Born on August 16, 2001, in Dallas, Texas, Monteisha grew up in a close-knit family that valued strong connections and love. She shared a deep bond with her mother and siblings, and her upbringing was filled with moments of joy and familial support. While details of her early education remain private, one thing is clear: her journey saw her move from Texas to Littleton, North Carolina, where she pursued her high school education. Monteisha graduated in 2019 from Northwest Collegiate and Technical Academy, a milestone that reflected her determination to carve out a bright future. Beyond her academics, she was known for her passion for cheerleading, a sport she embraced wholeheartedly. Her talent and enthusiasm brought pride to her family and joy to those who watched her perform. As Monteisha entered adulthood, she began making decisions that shaped her life. By the age of 20, she was navigating the complexities of relationships and independence. Unfortunately, one of these decisions led her into the arms of a man who would eventually become her worst nightmare. Monteisha entered into a relationship with 23-year-old Jamaisha Tillery, a choice that would bring nothing but pain and suffering. Unlike many relationships that begin with affection and deteriorate over time, Monteisha's connection with Jamaisha was abusive from the start. It was a toxic and violent partnership that offered no moments of solace or happiness. What made this relationship even more concerning was Jamaisha's troubling past. His criminal history was riddled with red flags that should have served as warnings. In April 2017, he was convicted of a heinous crime, felonious restraint, and forced battery against a minor. The victim, a 14-year-old at the time, endured unimaginable trauma. For his actions, Jamaisha received a sentence of 30 months probation and was required to register as a sex offender for a minimum of 10 years. Despite this conviction, he managed to evade the scrutiny that should have kept others safe from his predatory behavior. Monteisha's involvement with Jamaisha was a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. The relationship's abusive nature created a cycle of fear and control, leaving Monteisha trapped in a perilous situation. While the specifics of how the pair met remain unclear, it is evident that her kindness and trusting nature may have made her vulnerable to manipulation. The relationship's toxic dynamics only deepened the tragedy that would ultimately unfold as Monteisha struggled to break free from the grip of her abuser. Her story highlights the devastating impact of domestic violence and the systemic failures that allow abusers to continue harming others. Despite his previous conviction, Jamaisha was able to victimize Monteisha, underscoring the urgent need for stronger protections for vulnerable individuals. Monteisha's life, filled with promise and potential, was tragically cut short due to circumstances that could have been prevented. Her story is a painful reminder of the importance of addressing abusive relationships and holding perpetrators accountable for their actions before it's too late. Despite being an ongoing case, Jamaisha Tillery's legal troubles did little to deter him from committing further acts of violence. On one fateful day, he decided to visit Monteisha Arrington at her mother's home in Littleton, where she lived with her child. Ostensibly there to see the child, Jamaisha's visit took a dark turn when he lost his temper and launched a brutal attack on Monteisha. In a fit of rage, he stabbed her with a knife, leaving her no choice but to flee. Bleeding and terrified, she ran to a neighbor's house where she managed to dial 911 for help. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Monteisha injured and visibly shaken. She had sustained multiple cuts and other wounds from the attack. Recognizing the severity of the situation, officers immediately began searching the area for Jamaisha. However, He had fled before they arrived. What no one could have predicted was his audacious decision to return to the vicinity shortly afterward. Upon spotting him, the police wasted no time and swiftly arrested him, taking him into custody. Jameisha was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, a crime that carried serious implications. Although Montesha's injuries were severe, they were not life-threatening. In the aftermath, she bravely voiced her fears to law enforcement, expressing her deep concern that Jameisha might return to harm her again. She pleaded for protection, hoping the legal system would step in to safeguard her and her child from further danger. But what followed would shatter her hopes entirely. Despite the violent nature of the attack, Judge W. Turner Stevenson granted Jameisha a bond of only $40,000. To Montesha's dismay, he was released just a day later. Although the court placed restrictions on him, such as staying away from Montesha and forbidding him from possessing firearms, the damage was already done. The decision left Montesha feeling vulnerable and unprotected. Her pleas for safety had seemingly fallen on deaf ears, leaving her exposed to the very danger she had feared. For a brief period after Jameisha's release, Montesha tried to rebuild her life. She focused her energy on being a loving mother and leaned on the support of her family and friends. However, the constant shadow of fear loomed over her. She was painfully aware that Jameisha was still out there, free to move as he pleased. Every day was a battle to overcome the lingering fear that he could return to hurt her at any moment. Montesha's family shared her concerns and felt a growing sense of frustration with the legal system. They knew all too well that domestic violence often escalates and feared that the court's decision to release Jameisha had put her in grave danger. To them, the system's failure to protect Montesha was a ticking time bomb. Their worst fears were about to come true, as the lack of adequate safeguards would soon lead to devastating consequences. Despite the growing fear surrounding her safety, Montesha tried to remain optimistic and hopeful that things would get better. However, on April 19, 2022, everything changed in a single violent moment. The day began like any other, with Montesha going about her usual routine and caring for her child. Unfortunately, Jameisha Tillery had other plans. He showed up at Montesha's home, and what started as a verbal confrontation quickly escalated into an all-out violent struggle. As the argument intensified, witnesses nearby reported hearing loud shouting followed by the sharp sound of gunshots. In a desperate attempt to intervene and protect her daughter, Montesha's mother stepped in, trying to calm the situation. Tragically, it was in that moment of courage that both Montesha and her mother were shot by Jameisha. Montesha, at just 20 years old, suffered fatal injuries and was left lying on the floor. Her mother, too, was injured, but the extent of her injuries was not immediately clear. In the immediate aftermath, panic set in and frantic calls flooded 911 dispatchers. One call came from a neighbor who had heard the gunshots and screams coming from Montesha's home. The neighbor, visibly shaken, pleaded for help, saying, "Please, you have to send help. I heard shots fired. Someone is hurt." The dispatcher, trying to gather crucial details, asked if anyone was still in danger. The neighbor replied in a trembling voice, "I think they're both shot. I can see them through the window." Emergency services quickly responded to the call, rushing to the scene as the neighbor provided them with the necessary details about the unfolding crisis. The scene inside Montesha's home was chaotic, and the community was left in shock at the brutality of the attack. Montesha's tragic death left a deep wound within her family and friends, as well as the entire community, who were struggling to understand how such a senseless act of violence could happen. The emotional toll of Montesha's loss was immediate and profound. Her family and friends were left grappling with intense grief, anger, and confusion. For many, the pain was worsened by the realization that Jameisha had been allowed to roam free despite his violent past. The justice system's failure to keep him in custody after his previous offenses left Montesha's loved ones feeling betrayed. They couldn't help but wonder how much more could have been done to protect her from a man with such a violent history. In the days following the shooting, the local community rallied together in support of Montesha's grieving family. Vigils were held in her honor, with people sharing stories of her warmth, kindness, and love for her child. These gatherings became a space for those who knew Montesha to mourn her untimely death and to address the broader issues of domestic violence and gun violence. Local organizations and community leaders began pushing for change, advocating for stronger measures to protect victims like Montesha. Her loss created a void that could never be filled, but the love and memories she left behind would inspire the community to push for justice and change. The legal proceedings against Jamija Tillery took place against a backdrop of mourning and community outcry. Following the tragic shooting, Jamija was quickly arrested and charged with multiple offenses, including murder and attempted murder. As the case moved through the courts, it brought attention to the weaknesses in the legal system, especially when it comes to protecting victims of domestic violence. Many people were shocked that despite Montesia's previous attempts to seek help and protection, the system had failed to prevent such a horrific tragedy from occurring. Montesia's story became a rallying point for advocacy groups who pushed for stronger reforms in how courts handle cases involving domestic violence. These groups highlighted the need for better protective measures for women, especially in situations where threats or violence are already present. Her case raised important questions about the way justice is served in cases of domestic abuse and how the legal system can sometimes fail to protect the very people it is meant to safeguard. While the cases of Montesia and other victims revealed the deep pain caused by domestic violence, they also exposed the systemic failures of the justice system. Women often turn to the very men who are supposed to protect them, only to find themselves in even greater danger. This cycle of abuse can feel impossible to break. As a society, it's crucial to find ways to prevent such tragedies from happening in the future. There is a pressing need to strengthen laws, improve support systems, and ensure that victims have access to the protection they need before it's too late. As we continue to search for solutions, it's also important to consider the role of women in these situations. While no one should ever be blamed for being a victim of violence, it's crucial to recognize the warning signs and take action when necessary. Whether that means reaching out for help, leaving dangerous situations, or relying on support networks, women need to know that they are not alone. The key to avoiding or escaping these situations lies in awareness, empowerment, and access to resources that can make a real difference in their lives. To the men watching, it's important to understand that you are a crucial part of the solution. The change we need in society starts with you. If you know someone who is facing domestic violence, or if you've witnessed abuse, it's your responsibility to step up and help. There are resources available for both victims and those who want to help. You can reach the National Domestic Violence Hotline by calling the number on your screen or by texting STARTS to 88788. Together, we can work towards a society where domestic violence is no longer a tragic reality for so many women and families. The story we've uncovered today serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of toxic relationships and the devastating effects of abuse. What may seem like a simple disagreement or conflict can quickly escalate into life-threatening situations, especially when the system fails to protect those in need. This case sheds light on the importance of recognizing red flags and ensuring that help is always accessible to those who are vulnerable. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into today's Reddit story. If you found it impactful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, share your insights or experiences, and feel free to pass this along to others who might benefit from hearing it. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.